Ohio. Cleveland is named after Moses Cleveland, a surveyor from Connecticut who founded Cleveland in 1796 while surveying the Connecticut Western Reserve. Cleveland is located 60 miles west of the Ohio-Pennsylvania state border, east of northern Indiana, southeast of Michigan, and is across the U.S. maritime border from Canada, along the southern shore of Lake Erie. A port city, Cleveland is connected to the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence Seaway and sits at the mouth of the Cuyahoga River. Cleveland is a city of first. The term rock and roll was coined here, the concept of Superman was dreamed up here, and the first automobile was sold here. Many of Cleveland's food traditions were brought here by the people who first settled here. Today's menu includes some of Cleveland's most delicious local foods, including the Reuben sandwich, a giant pretzel served with Ohio-aged cheese and Cleveland mustard, the Parmageddon, and sweet and savory Punchi. So here's to a twice as good taste of Cleveland. There's no better place to explore the craft of conservation than at the Cleveland Museum of Art, whose conservation team has worked to preserve its vast collection since its founding in 1913.
We want an object to convey the kind of information about the materials, like the original colors, as much as it can at this point in its life. But a lot of the objects we're working with, they're aged, so they're not going to look absolutely new again, and that's okay. They tell a story.
So now we'll move the microscope closer on an area that we're really interested in looking at, and this will really allow us to see kind of all the different textures and layered structures that are present.
The other reliefs at San Vivaldo have been continually refreshed and repainted over the years, but since this one is in a museum now, our goal is to really preserve the old and original materials, so we're not planning to repaint it and cover that up.
So it's basically all about kind of figuring out what's best for each piece.
Absolutely, it's on a case-by-case basis, and we're working closely with our colleagues in curatorial and other departments, and we're also often talking to the source communities where some of these objects come from, so that we can make sure we have the fullest understanding before we remove anything. So I want to invite you guys to try making your own cotton swabs.
How do you ensure that you're restoring it without changing it and changing the authenticity of the sculpture?
One of the central tenets of conservation, we try to preserve as much original material as we can, and we try really hard to make sure everything we do is reversible and can be changed in the future.
So we'll go to one of my favorite parts of the painting, and we'll stop right here.
Oh wow!
So if you look
That's
closely,
so beautiful.
it's wonderful,
It's like a
isn't
little
it?
swirl.
Exactly, and you can see that impasto, or that kind of thickly built up paint on the surface. But when you look under the microscope, you can see all the different colors that are really mixed together.
Yeah, it's like a whole different world.
It really is.
The Great Lakes are a group of freshwater lakes, including Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario, extending almost 700 miles from north to south and 860 miles from east to west, with the exception of Lake Michigan. They form a natural border between Canada and the United States. Lake Superior is actually the largest of the group and is the second largest lake in the world. But Lake Michigan is the largest lake that is found in only one country, with a combined area of 94,250 square miles. They comprise the largest surface of freshwater in the world. In fact, the lakes contain 84% of the surface freshwater of North America. There's no better perch from which to view Lake Erie than aboard the top deck of the Great Lakes Science Center's William G. Mather steamship. Hi Andy, thanks so much for having us aboard. What can you tell us about Lake Erie?
Well, I can tell you it is the fourth largest of the Great Lakes in terms of surface area, and in terms of average depth, it ranks fifth.
Can you tell us about some of the similarities and differences between the different Great Lakes?
I mentioned that Lake Erie is the smallest lake. Lake Superior is much larger. It's insanely deep. So if you took all the other lakes and combined them, they would be able to fill up Lake Superior a little bit.
Can you tell us a little bit about how it freezes?
The entire water column has to reach about 40 degrees Fahrenheit in order for it to freeze, and that typically starts at the shoreline. The last time it fully froze over and ice coverage was 100% was in 1996.
Can you tell us how the Great Lakes formed in the first place?
About 20,000 years ago, parts of Canada and parts of the United States were covered by something called the Laurentide ice sheet. It was a massive collection of glaciers. And over time, as those glaciers moved around, they carved valleys and flattened mountains, and eventually they started to recede. And about 14,000 years ago, they started to fill up the areas that they had carved. And then that became the Great Lakes. They only assumed their current shape around 4,000 years ago.
Given we are at Progressive Field, home of the Cleveland Guardians, there's no more appropriate food to start with than a pretzel. Michael Januska, owner of the Old Brooklyn Cheese Company in Cleveland, makes an iconic giant pretzel topped with the Ohio cheese he ages and the Bohemian blend mustard he creates.
The cheese that we make, because we do the affinuring, is from Old Chatham, and they produce for us a triple milk Gouda, which is sheep, goat, and cow's milk, and then they send wheels of it green to us, and then we put it into our caves and age it from anywhere from 9 months to up until about the sweet spot's about 1.5 years.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you make your mustard?
The style that we do is a Cleveland caviar style, so it's like whole mustard seeds that are quite soft, but when you bite down into them, they explode like caviar, like with flavor. We get a little bit of butter going. Our butter is cave aged in with our cheeses that we produce here in Old Brooklyn. While that's going, we do a pub cheese, which we make from our cheeses, and then add just a splash of local beer, which is from Collision Bend down in the Flats in downtown Cleveland. We also have a little side ramekin of our Bohemian blend, which is our Cleveland-style mustard. We're good to go for one giant pretzel with Old Brooklyn pub cheese and Bohemian blend Old Brooklyn mustards.
Delicious.
It just knocks it out of the park.
Cleveland didn't invent rock music, but it did coin the term to describe it. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is one of the most iconic places in Cleveland. It's the perfect place to join Joe Butler, the manager of education programs at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to learn about the science behind rock and roll. What makes rock and roll so cool?
Well, rock and roll, in my opinion, is one of the coolest things that you can do with sound. It really has this cool power of bringing people together. That's what we celebrate here at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is how rock and roll music really brings people together. So I'd really like to talk to you about how sound works, because it's really a process that has 3 elements: generation, transmission, and perception. And so generation actually is where everything really begins, because sound is a sensation produced by vibrations. For rock and roll music, that generation can happen with a lot of things. Nice.
That's so cool.
Hit that one.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be playing here all week.
Once we have generation, though, that sound has to go somewhere. I've got this great demonstration here with an air cannon and some cups that can help us see how that energy moves. Hadley, would you like to be in charge of the air cannon?
Yes, it'd be
Come on
great.
around. Delaney, you're gonna step
I'll step out
aside.
of the way.
In 3, 2, 1.
Yes, we got it.
Great job. So we can see that even though you didn't take this and knock the cups over, you're able to transfer that energy using the medium of air to move that energy and knock over those cups. Just like sound travels from a source, maybe a guitar string, all the way into our eardrums where it makes them move, and then our brain takes over, and that's where the really cool stuff starts to happen.
So here's how it works. The outer ear captures sound waves. These waves travel a narrow pathway called the ear canal. Once they reach a dime-sized membrane called the eardrum, they vibrate. This vibration makes 3 very small bones, called the malleus, incus, and stapes, also vibrate. These vibrations are then sent to the cochlea, a hollow, snail-shaped bone that is filled with fluid. The vibrations make this fluid ripple, creating waves. Stereocilia, hair-like structures found on top of hair cells, are in turn moved. The stereocilia convert these movements into electrical signals and cause the release of chemicals called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters bind to the auditory nerve cells and create an electrical signal that travels to the brain via the auditory nerve. The brain then interprets these signals into sounds we recognize. So what ingredients do you have to gather to make a Lys Reuben sandwich?
We start, first of all, by making everything in-house. We make the sauerkraut, we make the rye bread, we make our Thousand Island dressing, and everything comes together to make that Lys Reuben.
So once you have all these house-made ingredients, how do you construct the perfect Reuben?
We make the rye in-house. We use rye flour from an Amish mill in Millersburg. We're gonna make our Thousand Island dressing. This is a house ketchup we make that is tomatoes, carrot, onion, celery, and a spice mixture. We're gonna add a little bit of that, some of the minced house pickle, a little pinch of local honey just to put a little sweetness in there. Salt, pepper, and we're gonna whisk that all together. And that makes our house Thousand Island. All the corned beef, we're looking for about 1/4-inch pieces. And then we're going to butter our rye, go right onto the flat top. We're gonna add our Swiss cheese. Now we're gonna take our corned beef, add it to the flat top next to our bread. We're gonna add some of our sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut is a finely cut raw cabbage that has been fermented. It has a stable shelf life and a distinctive sour flavor because of the lactic acid formed by the bacteria fermenting the sugars in the cabbage leaves.
So we take our corned beef, we go onto our sandwich, put our top bread and Swiss on top, slice the sandwich in half on the diagonal, and that is the Lys Reuben.
Try some dressing here.
Enjoy. Everything all together makes kind of the perfect bite.
Cleveland's public square was part of an original town plat overseen by Moses Cleveland, but it's also the site of an electric first. Thomas Edison was born in Milan, Ohio, less than 60 miles away, and Cleveland had the first electrified public square in 1879 thanks to Charles Brush and his arc lamp.
Electricity is just the movement of charged particles.
Electromagnetic induction was first discovered in 1831 by Michael Faraday. Faraday noticed that when he moved a magnet in and out of a coil of wire, it induced voltage, and therefore a current was produced. Today, this process of using magnetic fields to produce voltage is used to convert energy of various forms into electricity. Energy, be it wind, geothermal, water, coal, can be used to generate enough steam to turn a turbine. As the turbine spins, the mechanical energy of the turbine is converted into electric energy by turning a copper wire coil between the poles of a large magnet. Through electromagnetic induction, the magnet's power drags electrons through the wire. Something similar I wanted to ask about was Charles Brush's arc lamp. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so Charles Brush's arc lamp is actually pretty similar to this plasma ball here, except the arc lamp uses 2 carbon rods, and those carbon rods have a magnet inside them. So when a current is passed through those rods, the magnet actually separates those rods, which creates kind of like you see in this plasma ball here, a really bright stream of light or an electrical arc. Actually, if you put your hands on the ball, you are conducting electricity. It's moving towards you. And if you were to touch each other while touching the ball, you would actually shock each other.
So we could theoretically zap each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely not.
Shocking science, I know.
While focused on more than simply automobiles, the best place to roll into Cleveland's rich history of automobile innovation is with expert Darren Phillips Bay at the Crawford Auto-Aviation Museum, which is located inside the Cleveland History Center.
This is the 1899 Winton horseless carriage. It would become known as the first automobile.
So I don't really see anything that looks like an accelerator or a gas pedal here. Can you tell us a little bit about how this kind of thing would have been driven?
So this is very different than what we have today. This would take a lot of effort. Originally, you would take this crank right here. You would then lift up this part right here. You'd stick it in and then crank it. It would take a lot of effort to get the car started, and then you would steer it with this tiller right here. And then this is your gas, and then this is your brake pedal. And you'd use these two levers to change the gears of the car.
Can you tell us about Garrett Morgan?
So Garrett Morgan is an African-American inventor, and he would eventually come along his biggest, most famous invention, which is his traffic signal.
What inspired him to create the traffic signal?
So he saw a lot of accidents in the Cleveland area. There was a lot of congestion with traffic. There were streetcars, there were horse carriages, there were regular pedestrians, there were regular horses. He saw all that, and in his mind, he wanted to solve problems. So that's what an inventor does.
How does this traffic signal differ from one that you might see today?
So this one is different as there's a yield sign. It's a lot different than how we have green, red, and yellow. This one stops the yield how it is currently. This tells traffic to slow down. It can also rotate. It can form a T, which means stop to that other side of traffic. And then on the tips, there's a go button.
So Jeff Matt, give us a ballpark idea of what's going on today.
This is my ode to Cleveland. This is the world-famous Parmageddon. This is a potato and onion pierogi sandwich with a house-made sauerkraut, cheddar cheese, hand-cut fries, artisan bread. It is my ode to Cleveland, the Cleveland-centric sandwich.
So tell us, how did you come up with the Parmageddon? It's such a creative idea.
Well, thanks. I'm a Cleveland guy. You know, I was born here in Cleveland, Ohio. Actually, I grew up in the first suburb south of Cleveland, which is called Parma, where the name Parmageddon actually comes from. And Parma has a huge Eastern European population, and pierogies is a staple food, not only in Parma, but in Cleveland. So when I was developing a sandwich, when I first opened Melt back in 2006, that said, what is Cleveland? I want this sandwich to taste like Cleveland, to smell like Cleveland, to look like Cleveland. I chose the Parmageddon and the pierogi. All right, so we're taking our pierogies, we're gonna dredge them in some flour. This is the first step of making the awesome Parmageddon. We're dropping our pierogies into a deep fryer right here. All right, pierogies are looking fantastic. We've got a little light toasty brown on there. So we're gonna take our pierogies that we just deep fried, and we're gonna put them in to our hot oil, and we're gonna brown them again a second time. All right, so we got a nice golden brown on there. I'm gonna toss in some white onions, and I'm gonna add our Napa cabbage, which is gonna create our fresh sauerkraut that we're making in the pan. Now I'm gonna add our secret ingredient. This is what we call our kraut spice. We've got kosher salt, we've got black pepper, crushed red pepper seeds. We got some brown sugar in there. We've also got some coriander, caraway, and a couple other things which I can't really tell you about. The magic ingredient, the magic touch. So this is going to start to break the cabbage down, break the onions down. I also just deglazed the bottom of the pan, which was nice and brown from sauteing the onions and the pierogies and the cabbage. So you can start to see that liquid starting to turn nice and dark brown, very earthy color. It's exactly what we want. So we want to reduce that liquid down to almost nothing. That is perfect. So now it's time to toast our bread on our flat top. If you notice, we're getting buttered on both sides right here. Nice even brown, not too much, not too little. So this is our sharp cheddar cheese, 4 slices, 2 on either side. We're gonna let it hang over the edge slightly. You can see the cheese is already starting to melt. So we're gonna take our pierogies and we're gonna be composing our sandwiches now. So 2 pierogies on either sandwich, like so. And then we're gonna top that with our house-made sauerkraut, our white onions, all of our awesome flavors are in there. So we are gonna take these sandwiches right here. We're going up into our salamander. Kind of pull all the flavors together. Oh yeah, perfect. The almighty Parmageddon is done. Order up, twice as good.
Can we give it a try? I think so. This is by far the best grilled cheese I've ever had.
You guys are now honorary Clevelanders.
You're standing next to Vacuum Facility 6 here at the NASA Glenn Research Center. This is where we test many of our electric propulsion devices that can position satellites, different spacecraft up in space. Right now we're testing the AEPS, Advanced Electric Propulsion System, 12 kilowatt thruster that is slated to be on the power propulsion element on the Gateway Lunar Outpost. So that is, think of it as a small space station that is going to orbit around the moon, so we can send stuff to this outpost as kind of a, almost a truck stop, right? Because it takes a long time to travel in space.
What is electric propulsion?
Sure, so it is a device that will only work in space. It takes, in most cases, xenon gas. It will ionize that gas, and it will accelerate it through either a magnetic field or a negatively charged grid and shoot out these ions, therefore pushing the spacecraft, and those ions are coming out at tens of thousands of miles an hour. They're really small, but they're going really fast, so that's how we get our propulsion.
We set this self-contained laboratory into a free fall towards the center of the Earth, which counters gravity, and we get to zero gravity for 5.2 seconds. Today we're testing flight suit materials that the astronauts are going to wear on long-duration spaceflight missions. We'll set these up inside of a sample card like this here. So it's just a flat fabric, and we'll lay it down here at the bottom. We'll put it into this wind tunnel, and we'll see how it burns in the atmosphere that the spacecraft is going to be exposed to. And then we'll put it into our drop tower and see how it burns in zero gravity. So we call it a drop tower sometimes, but it's actually built into the ground. So what we do is we take the drop vehicle, we seal it up, and we pick it up with a crane, and we just bring it over, and we hold it over top of here. We take a lid, and we put it on top, and then we just evacuate the whole chamber so it's in a vacuum, and then we'll free fall in the vacuum without air resistance. If we need more than 5.18 seconds, we have to send it to the space station, and that happens too. But we like to test it here on the ground first before we send a very expensive piece of hardware into outer space.
So how did Punchi come to be associated with Cleveland?
Well, we have a very large population of Eastern European immigrants here in Cleveland, in the Midwest. After World War I and World War II, everybody came here, there were a lot of jobs. With that comes a lot of our traditions from Eastern Europe.
Oh, wow, that's so exciting. So what is a punchki, really?
A punchki is, and I'm glad that you didn't say it, ladies, it is not a donut. It is 5 times the butter, 4 times the egg. It's fried a little bit longer. And what's really exciting about it is it's like 10 times the filling from a donut. If you get a real punchki, it's gonna be really heavy.
So you would say it's definitely better than a donut?
100 times better.
Can you tell us about how the savory punchki came about?
So savory punchki is my baby, and what I have here for you today is the Clevelander, because you're here in Cleveland. So this punchki is sauerkraut, kielbasa, some carrots and onions, and it's not typical. Everybody likes to say that we invented the savory punchki. My mom and I were making punchki, and we had kielbasa on the stove, and we just put it all together, and
this dough has been resting overnight. All that chemical reactions are going on inside overnight, giving it all the beautiful flavor. Okay. And then these pieces go onto the frying screen.
what we did here was it's sauerkraut, kielbasa, onions, carrots. This is an Eastern European stew, truly. And we put it on a beautiful punchki.
This is so good. So surprising that it's savory, given the bun and everything.
Right? Like, you wouldn't expect it. Punchki are the perfect canvas for anything. What we do, and it's really, really important, is to make that hole big enough because we got to get all of our jellies and jams out of here because we've got 6 weeks of Lent. If you are carrying a dozen punchki out somewhere and it is not like weighing down your arm, then you don't have a punchki, you just have a donut. So now we've gotten to the most exciting part. We've got blueberry filling, we've got buttercream, we have mocha, pineapple, and cherry happening right now. There's like nothing that isn't associated with fun when it comes to punchki.
Should we give the sweet one a try as well?
For sure. I mean, you had savory, so you had some lunch. Now you gotta have your desserts.
Of course. What flavors do you have here?
So we have right here strawberry, blueberry. We make 35 flavors at Rudy's.
This is definitely my new favorite Paczki.
A fruit-filled one. That's as traditional as you can get.
Yes, it's probably my new favorite sweet treat, probably.
You'll always know it's Punchi Day because you'll have powdered sugar all over you.
Yes, definitely has to be messy.
And polka in your ear, yes.
A lot of fun. Yes, thank you so much for having us. I've never tried anything like this before.
Thanks so much for visiting us here in Cleveland. Yes. And you're officially Eastern European now.
Cleveland has a rich history of contributing to the science of rock and roll, the geology of the Great Lakes, and the craft of conservation. Plus, it has been at the forefront of the physics of electricity, the innovation of the automobile, and the engineering of space. Shaped by ancient icebergs, Cleveland is now the hub of science, innovation, and arts, which makes it twice as good!
Twice as Good with Hadley and Delaney is brought to you by Miele. Immer besser, forever better. Miele. And by Cuties. Cute you can eat. Cuties.